Today I'm going to take a look at another one of my Mannlicher Schoenauers, and this Mannlicher Schoenauer is a 1908. So just have a quick look at her. You have your typical Mannlicher Schoenauer action with the bolt handle ahead of the rear receiver bridge. This one has double set triggers, as you can see there. And we'll head down through. This has the Mannlicher stock, the typical Mannlicher stock, a real Mannlicher stock. Goes all the way to the end, ends in a very nice nose cap there, and a very nicely made sight, front sight. Rear sight, we'll go back here. We'll have another look at it whenever we're talking more about the rifle. Here's our rear sight. Back through our receiver, you can see there's a split bridge that makes it different than most other rifles, especially modern rifles today. And we can go all the way back here to the butt. And on the other side, it does have a cheek piece. So let's have a look on this side of the rifle as well. Okay, we're upside down, but that's okay. And you can see another view of the set triggers with a little adjustment screw right here in the center to adjust the pull weight. Look on the bottom, and here is our magazine that you can actually take out by pushing in the one of these little silver buttons, the one on the right, and then turning it to the side and pulling it out, and we'll have a look at that too. There is our tiny little screws, the screw blade there. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. Just a very nice looking rifle, something that you can see the nice checkering here. I mean, it's just about 100 years old, so you're getting a little bit of wear here and there. And then also, let's have a quick look at the butt plate back here while we're at it. Let's see if I can see it. This here actually opens up, and there's a cleaning rod inside of there, or there's a space for a cleaning rod. This one, the cleaning rod is gone. So anyways, let's go sit down and have another look at this, and we'll talk about ammunition and everything else. So we're continuing to have a look at our Mannlicher Schoenauer, the 1908 model. And we had a quick look at it just going over the whole rifle. We'll open it up, make sure that we're empty. Now there's various models of the Mannlicher Schoenauer. This here is a 1908, which means that it's in 8x56 Mannlicher Schoenauer. That is not an 8x57 Mauser. It is a smaller cartridge by 1mm in this dimension here. It is a typical 8mm cartridge with the .323 bullet. The case, though, is just slightly different. It's a little bit narrower here down at the base, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes whenever we get into loading for it. So basic features, we had already talked about the split bridge, the sights here. Now this one here is missing one of the fold-down sights, and actually I found out one of my other Mannlicher Schoenauers, and I kind of understand why they took it out, because it's easy enough to bump the one of the fold-down leaves and get it up there and throw your aiming off. Basic operation of the rifle: you put your bullets down in here, of course, and it's a rotary magazine and nothing in there. Close your bolt. Now, with these rifles, it's sort of like a Mauser, but it has a two-position safety in the back. So you can flip that all the way over to the side. That locks your bolt, which is very good for carrying in the field. And then back over here and taking it off safe. Now, this has a set trigger. Now this trigger, tell you what, let's take the bolt out just so there isn't any question. Now the bolt release on the back of these, again, is different than the Mauser. You push in on the back of it and you pull out your bolt. Kind of an odd angle here again. So let's have a little look at your set trigger. So set trigger, you have a trigger in the back that you pull that sets it, and then one on the front that actually releases it. Or you can use the front trigger for a longer pull that actually releases the firing pin as well. Now this one has a little bit of problems with it, in that it looks like somebody tried to mess with it to make the set trigger have a little less, or the non-set trigger have a little less creep in it. What they ended up doing was they sanded off, or they milled down a little bit on the triggers, so they've got a little bit of play in them, and as a result it affects the trigger pull. So let me see here. Once again, set your trigger, so just pull it back until you feel a click, and then just a little bit of pressure on the front, and boom, your rifle would go off if it was loaded and the bolt was in there. And again, you can just pull the front trigger, so it's a little bit far forward, and use that as well. This needs a little bit of work on it. I've already taken this out of here, and actually we'll talk about that in a second too. I've taken out the set triggers, had a look at them, and with feeler gauges I determined that I'm going to need a little spacer in there, probably a little brass washer that you can get and then modify down to exactly where you need it. That will tighten these triggers up just slightly, and then it should operate as intended. This screw as well has been replaced, and it is actually too short to engage the trigger mechanism to change the set weight for that. So not big deals, but something that has to be done. And actually talking about that too, about getting in here and actually working on these, is the screw heads. If you can see here once, they are rather, see if I can get them up here, they are very, very narrow, the blade in those. And what I found out was that nothing that I have Brownwell set and a couple other sets of screwdrivers. What I ended up doing was I looked into, not Brownwell's, no, it's a typical one. Anyways, I'll think about it in a second. But anyways, going to Brownwell's, I ended up finding US-made screwdriver blades specifically made for gunsmithing that, you can see these guys here, they are set up to the exact specifications of the widths of the screw slots that I have. And so I ended up taking feeler gauges to each one of these and estimated what size that I needed and ended up buying them, and it's worked out very well. Now I think there was one here that had a little bit of a damage on it before I got to it, but as a result of getting the proper screwdriver heads, I was able to not increase the damage that was done to them. And these weren't terrible. I'm thinking that they were like $7, $6 or $7 a piece. So I think I invested total, I got some extra ones maybe for about $40. So again, this is the little carbine length. I'm thinking it's an 18.5-inch barrel. Some of the later ones are 20-inch. I believe these are actually 18.5-inch barrel. This, like I said, is an 1908 and is chambered in this kind of a peculiar round, which is a Mannlicher Schoenauer round. Now, you cannot get actual loaded ammunition, except I think there's an Australian firm that does make some loaded ammunition for it, but it's crazy expensive. I mean, you know, like $100 for a box of cartridges. So the best thing to do is get into reloading. And what we ended up doing was, if you want to reload for it, or you need anybody else that's going to reload for you, I highly recommend this book. This is Ken Waters' Pet Loads from the Hand Loader magazine. And in here, we have all of our stuff on the Mannlicher Schoenauer. And it tells you that the base diameter is actually a little bit smaller than what a typical 30-06 case or any of the other cases that are based on the 30-06 case. So, but what Mr. Waters found out, Ken Waters, was that you can actually take most of the 8x57 brass today, especially Winchester, which is what I have here, will be slightly smaller in diameter at the base. And unless you have a very tight chamber in your Mannlicher Schoenauer, it should actually form down and give you a proper size case with Mannlicher Schoenauer cases. So, to actually form these cases from 8x57 Winchester brass, and so that I can actually use them in my Mannlicher Schoenauer, I picked up a set of RCBS 8x56 Mannlicher Schoenauer dies, sizing dies. And you can see here, I actually ended up getting these on eBay. A lot of times they're a special order. RCBS makes them, and also C&H makes them as well. And C&H says that they have them in stock, but sometimes it'll take a while to get them. Same with this. I ended up finding these on eBay for brand new for actually a little bit less money than what I would have paid going through somebody like Midway or with C&H. These dies, whenever matched up with my Winchester brass, 8x57 brass, gave me proper fitting brass for my chamber. So, problem solved. Now, a couple other things I want to look at here is this rifle is not drilled and tapped for a scope. Let me see if I can get them up here a little bit closer. As you can see here, the bridge has no holes, or the receiver ring has no holes in it. The bridge does not have any holes in it, nor does the side here, which sometimes you'll see the side-mounted scope mounts. Now, so far, I've decided to just keep it as is because I sort of like it to shoot at open sights. With getting older, I may end up possibly drilling and tapping this, although I hate to do that to such a nice rifle. So anyways, I wanted to also talk about back in those days, to reload quickly. I'm going to leave my bolt out, but you can actually still use, in this rifle, the stripper clip bridge, which is located right here just at the back of the magazine, sort of like a military rifle. So again, I don't have the bolt in here, and you just basically fit your clip in there like you would in a military rifle. Take your thumb and get it at a proper angle and strip them down in there. Let's go this way. There we go. And voila. In just a moment, once you actually get a proper angle on it, your magazine is loaded. And you would work your bolt. And again, this is one of the rifles that's very well known for being extremely slick in operation. Now, to get these out of here, right now, instead of running them through because I'm in my house, I am going to use the little unload button here. Now, let's see if we can just pop all of these babies out at once. So if you wanted to do release the magazine follower, and actually there's a spool, and get all your cartridges out, you just hit this little button, and boom, all 5 cartridges are out. So that's actually quicker to unload than the Mauser or any of the other rifles with a floor plate with a release on it. And like I said, this is one of the, now that's empty, slickest actions out there. And this is one of my favorite rifles, and especially now, since I have proper loaded cartridges for it. I have more of the Winchester brass. I have an entire box of 100 in there. For the time being, I've just loaded up 20, took it to the range, and made sure that it actually worked. One of the other things is, too, though, you want to actually mark your cases. Now, for the time being, just because this is an 8x56, I don't want to put them in my 8x57 Mauser, so I put a little mark on them, and I also keep them in a well-marked box like this. And let's see, one other thing about this rifle is this sling swivels. Sling swivels on the rifle are fixed to the rifle, as opposed to the ones today that are typically quick release. And you'll see the front one has a typical Mannlicher one that goes actually through the stock and has it on the front band like so. Now, this is a 3/4 inch sling. You can go through, I believe New England Custom Guns has the slings for them for around $50 for a 3/4 inch. I ended up getting this one off of eBay, this sling, which is 3/4 inch, and it was an Amish firm, I believe it's from Ohio, that was making slings, and they have 3/4 inch ones. So this has worked out extremely well. I have actually taken this out in the woods once to go hunting. Ended up having, just gotten my reloading here down, so I was able to take it out just once. But if you get a chance to get one of these rifles, now the 8x56 is a 1908. The 1903 Mannlicher Schoenauer model is the more often seen, the 6.5x54. The 1910, I believe, is a 9.5x56. And I think also there's a 9x56 in there as well. I'm trying to remember if that's what year that one is. Might be a 1909. And then once you get up to the later ones, like a 1950, 1952 model, you can get various calibers in them. But in the early days, they were actually specific to the gun model. And you'll find also that some of these, the ones that are in the kind of the oddball calibers, they are usually a little bit cheaper because you have to figure out how to reload for them. But it's not that hard to reload by the 8x56, so if you can pick up one for a good price, I would highly recommend it. You can have a classic rifle. These rifles, take a quick look at the bolt here. I mean, the workmanship on these really would rival, machining and stuff, any of the custom rifles today. So there's just so much work that was done on these rifles back in the day. So it's sort of like a Obendorf Mauser, sort of in that class. And extremely smooth working action. Nice and accurate rifle, which my 1952 is proved with the Cal scope mounted on it. And just a fun rifle to have. And they are not that expensive. I would suggest picking one up, like I said, if you get a chance, before they start going up in price more. And I will end it right there. And thank you very much. This is Snowball042. and out.